In this next video I'm going to show you about adding spaces. Okay, so once you've set up your views for the spaces, you can start applying them to the model. You can do this by selecting individual boundaries or automatically filling each space. Spaces can be further divided using space separators. You can also tag spaces, which can help with naming and numbering. So let's start off by creating spaces by selecting the boundaries. So in the Analyze tab, we're going to click on this space here. Now in the Modify area, we're going to, this is already highlighted here, Tag on Placement. What that means is that the name, as you can see here, will automatically be placed when it's put in situ. If we turn it off, you can see there's no tag. You can turn the tags on later on, so don't worry if you happen to position it without a tag. You can add them on later. Also, when we do have the tag here, if we look here on the horizontal, we can change this to vertical, so we can apply the tag in different ways. Now in the options bar, we've got a couple of other areas here. What we should do is set the upper limit and offset, which are these. These control the volume calculations and set the height of the space. If space names were previously created in a schedule, you can select a space name from the drop-down list. But since we haven't got that, then it's just new. Right, setting the upper limit. Set the upper limit to the level above and set the offset to 0 if you want elements such as ceilings to control the height of the space. So, as we've got here, we're on floor, so we'll set that to floor 2, and we want to set this to 0. If we leave it to floor 1 and 4000, which is what it was, what it would mean is that when the space is created, it would be at 4 meters above the floor 1, regardless of whether there's any ceilings or not. If there's a ceiling there, it will go up to the ceiling. If there's no ceiling, it will continue on up until it reaches the 4 meters. Now we could have the next floor up could be at 5 meters, so the space would only go up partly of the way until it reaches this figure. So by setting it to the floor above and setting it to 0 would mean that it will just continue going until it hits something such as the ceiling. Now, as we've seen earlier, if we hover our cursor over the spaces, you can see that we can manually place a space in each area. And we click, and click, and click, and click, and click, and we can continue on doing this right the way throughout this floor. Now, it's also a good idea, I'll just escape this, to have a section view whilst you're doing this. That way you'll get to understand a bit more about what's happening. So let's just we don't want this one, so we can, this is the one that we're placing in, and this is our section view here. Now as you can see, if we hover over, in fact let's go into this view and turn them on, the spacers, so as we can see a bit better as what we're doing it. Now we don't need a reference line, so I'm just going to put the colour on. Now as you can see, the space is filled right the way up to the ceiling as we've got here. So if we go back here and continue to place a space, you can see the room filled up with the space. Now, so that was placing the spaces one at a time. But what about the option that we had of placing them automatically? Well, all we need to do is click on space again, but this time we tell it to place spaces automatically. And then it would tell us how many spaces is being created. Now this number equates to how many the automatic area is just done, not the total number of spaces. If you're doing this straight from scratch without placing one in the first place, then this number would be the total, but this is how many that the automatic process created. And this automatic placement only applies to this particular floor. You'd need to create another floor plan to create spaces on a different floor. Now let's say we've got an area such as this area. Let's just close these ones down a minute so as we can have a bit more room. Let's say the architect or the user has changed their mind and they wish to create this area as a different zone, not a zone, or a different area, different room area for a different space. So we want to, we can use the space separator to then change this from one room to another. To do that, all we need to do is use the space separator tool. But before we do this, I just want to point out these crosshairs that we can move, as well as the tag. When we create our separation, whichever side this crosshairs is on, then this side of the space will remain, and the opposite, this other side, will be deleted. If the crosshairs are here and we create a space separator along this line, that space will remain and this space will be deleted. Now if the tag is outside of the room, the tag will then show a question mark and say that it's not aligned to the space. If you want to align a tag to a space but not be within the room, you need to use this leader command, which makes this line permanent, and then we can have it outside of the room, and we can use the leader to create something like this. Without this leader, it jumps back here, or if we position it outside, it will tell us there's a warning sign and it will show a question mark. It will ask us if we want to ignore it and leave it there or move to space. So let's use this space creator. So analyze, separator. I want to keep this bottom part, so I'm going to move the crosshairs to here and the tag to this side. So when I use the separator, you get the normal tools, but I'm just using a line, so I'm going to create it from there and go straight across. And as you can see, that area's been deleted, and if needs be, we can go back in and tell it that we want to create a new space here. So now that even though it was one open space, it's now classed as two separate spaces.